Yeah. All right, thank you everybody for coming today. It is 12:30 p.m. Today's Tuesday, February 18th, and we are calling to order a special meeting today. We're on the calendar from 12:30 to 1, and we have a little bit more time in the room if we need. And I'd like to start with a roll call now, quick.
Assemblymember Myers is absent. Assemblymember Martinez.
Present.
Assemblymember Rivera.
Present.
Assemblymember Littlefield.
Here.
Assemblymember Johnson.
Here.
Assembly Chair Constant.
Here.
Assembly Vice Chair Salazar.
Here.
Assemblymember Bronca.
Here.
Assemblymember Collins.
Happy to be here.
Assemblymember Raleigh is absent. Assemblymember Stolt.
Here.
Assemblymember President.
Here.
Chair Constant, you're informed.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next, we would do the Pledge of Allegiance and landing off. I did not arrange this, so do the Mr. Littlefield.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, and we'll hand it on.
A land acknowledgement is a formal statement recognizing the indigenous people of a place. It is a public gesture of appreciation for the past and present indigenous stewardship of the lands that we now occupy. It is an actionable statement that marks our collective movements toward decolonization and equity. The Anchorage Assembly would like to acknowledge that we gather today on the traditional lands of the Dena'ina Athabascans. For thousands of years, the Dena'ina have been and continue to be the steward of this land. It is with gratefulness and respect that we recognize the contributions, innovations, and contemporary perspectives of the Cook and Upper Cook on the
Right, thank you. So today we have 4 items of business. I'm going to go ahead and read them all, and ideally we'll take them all as one. They'll be like a consent agenda. Each item will be considered individual, but as one item. So first we have Assembly Memorandum number AM 185-2025. Request for approval to enter into a grant agreement with Boys and Girls Club of South Central Alaska for the purpose of supporting the operations of the Northeast Community Council, the Northeast Community Center. Then we have item 4B. We have Assembly Memorandum AM 189-2025. Request for approval to enter into grant agreements with the Boys and Girls Club of South Central Alaska for the purpose of supporting the operations of the River Club Northeast Community Center and Woodland Park Club. Item 4C, Assembly Memorandum AM 186-2025, request for approval to enter into grant agreement with Boys and Girls Club South Central Alaska for the purpose of supporting the operations of the Mountain Recreation Center. And then item 4D, Memorandum AM 205-2025, request for approval to enter into grant agreement with Boys and Girls Club of South Central Alaska for the purpose of supporting the operations of Mountain View Community Center. So these are 4 items. One member has raised a question. I'll ask the clerk and Mr. Gates. Do you have any objection to us taking these items up as one? The question that was raised was, does this, ultimately make them one item that would be subject to the public hearing requirements? And so I personally don't believe that's the case, because if that was the case, it would be true if we took them up one at a time or together. But is there any objection from Mr. Gates?
Hello. I'm not clear what the question was, but all of these are in contracts. None of them is part of a public hearing.
Mr. Gates, I'll ask the question one more time. I'm sorry. The question being, since we have 4 items on the agenda, if we were to take them all up kind of as a mini consent agenda, would that trigger the public hearing requirement, because the sum of all of the 4 items together would be in excess of the threshold?
No. Again, these are contract approvals. If it's appropriations, then it's what we're passing with control the public hearing, but not these contract approvals. Since money's already appropriated, as again, identified in the budget fund streams.
Right. So, Madam Clerk, any objection?
Nope.
Okay, no objection from Councilor Clerk. Then we're gonna go ahead and proceed in that manner. Go ahead and ask Mr. Reservia for a motion.
Move to approve.
So there's a motion to approve items 4A through 4D as read, made by Mr. Reservia and a second by Mr. Baldwin. Mr. Reservia.
Thank you. I'll say a few things. I do want to also at some point hand it over to the municipal manager to share some other information. But I want to just largely say that this is an effort to do a few things. It's an effort to allow the transition of the Boys and Girls Club to transition out of the building in Mountain View, and for that eventually that building to be taken over by the city and become a rec center. So this is an effort to do that in a smooth way so that there's not disruption in services to the families and the children that live in that community. It's also an effort to recognize the fact that due to federal funding challenges and a variety of things, the Boys and Girls Club find itself in a difficult place at this moment, which is impacting the transition as well. So these are all funds that were already planned to go to the Boys and Girls Club, but they're done in a different timeline. And so I just encourage my colleagues to approve this. And I want to thank the Boys and Girls Club for their service in the Mountain View area. And to continue to work with them in the other areas that they serve. I want to hand it over to the municipal manager. I'd love for you to just walk through these briefly and just explain each one of them and what they are.
Certainly, to the chair, member Garcia, and to all the members. First, I would say thank you very much for convening today on short notice for this to hear these 4 items. As was indicated, we requested this meeting after conversations with the Boys and Girls Club organization, which they indicated that because of certain funding uncertainties and other funding streams that the organization relies on, specifically federal funding streams and federal grant funds, there was a critical need to receive the 2025 grant funds that had already been appropriated for the Boys and Girls Club prior to the end of February. So these items were actually all slated to be up for review on the agenda, the assembly agenda next week. So we just expedited them by 1 week in order to hopefully make payment before the end of the month. As part of that conversation, it was also conveyed to us that part of this funding concern would result potentially in the closure of the Mountain View Boys and Girls Club by the end of February. So as Mr. Senator Garcia noted, this is part of this is putting these pieces together to support the Boys and Girls Club to continue operation in the Mountain View location until there can be a smooth handover of operations in that location to the municipality, to the Parks and Recreation Department at the conclusion of May, beginning of June. And in terms of that transition, I would say we are excited about being responsive to community requests for a more fulsome community center experience at that location. We're also very deeply grateful to the Boys and Girls Club for the many years of service in that location and also for their partnership with the municipality and other locations around the municipality. So as noted, there are 4 items in front of you, all of which are really tied to funds that have already been appropriated, and we're simply looking at approval to grant agreements today. The first item is a standard grant for the Northeast Community Center location of the Boys and Girls Club. That is something that we have given for many years. This is the 2025 grant fund to support that specific club. That club is not closing, it's continuing to operate as usual in 2025. The second item is it derives from a budget amendment. I believe it was Budget Amendment 6, introduced I think by Member Boland and Member Martinez during the 2025 budget cycle that allocated a total of $400,000 to the Boys and Girls Club for multiple locations and with a specific flag to be supporting accessibility of those locations, supporting access also specifically to the Mountain View location for children to access that without charge. And so this item is a sliced up version of that. It's basically a prorated amount of that total $400,000. It's the $150,000 that is the portion of that budget amendment that was designated for the locations other than the Mountain View Club. And then the last two items are specific, funding specific to the Mountain View location of the Boys and Girls Club. The first item, item 4C, is again that standard grant, so it's the parallel of the Northeast grant we have for years and years, given an annual grant to the Boys and Girls Club to support their operations at the Mountain View location. This is simply a prorated version of it through the end of May, designed to support the club until the date of transition of that location. And the fourth item, item 4D, is another prorated Mountain View item, and this is the sliced out version of that budget amendment, $400,000. So there was a portion of that item that was specific to the Mountain View location. This is a prorated amount that it reflects allocation of those funds through the end of May, again, up until the date of orderly transition. And you'll notice items 4C and 4D are specifically structured to pay out on a monthly basis. That's designed to accommodate for, again, what we understand to be some of the financial uncertainty inherent in moving forward that location, and so that those funds will be paid out as opposed in on a monthly basis as opposed to as a lump sum. As Ms. Gamble here with me from the Parks and Recreation Department, and Susan Anderson from the Boys and Girls Club to answer any further questions that I may have.
So first in the queue is Ms. Salto and Mr. Martinez and Mr. Salt. Go ahead, Ms. Salto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is for the school manager. I noticed all of these contracts were backdated January 1, and I'm just curious if that's just cleanup, that this is going to pick up already incurred expenses, or are they really forward-looking, but we wanted to capture the span of operations for 2025?
It's a good question to the chair, to members Zolotel, Vice Chair Zolotel. These are 2025 grant funds, so the date of the grant agreement for 2025 grants always starts at the beginning of the year, is my understanding. So these are designed as a standard grant agreement for the calendar year 2025. We just have not, this is us getting to the point of allocating those funds. As I know the members are all well aware, we frequently do not give up grant funds right at the very beginning of the year, even though they are for the entirety of the calendar year. So this is the delay in distribution of the funds that requires the backdating to January 1.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Martinez.
Thank you, Chair. Municipal Manager, just for language consistency, is there a difference between the Mountain View Community Center and the Mountain View Rec Center? The last two items have distinctly different names, and their names are consistent throughout each document, consistently. So is that intentional, is that a mistake, and can we get it all on the same page? Because reading it may not tell the average outsider that it's the same thing.
Through the Chair, Member Martinez, you caught an error in the paperwork. They are the same thing, Recreation Center, Community Center, same thing. But we can certainly amend or correct it as required.
So it doesn't make a difference functionally. Mount Clerk, I don't think that it does from a kind of a appropriating process or
From an appropriating process, I would say, I don't know what they're called, or if it's even in the code.
and I don't think it matters. So I don't, is there any problem if we just leave these documents as they are? Mr. Gates. I'm just saying, really, there's if you go through a process. Go ahead.
It can change on to the actual name.
I don't know that it has an actual name. Is the thing.
Mr. Chair, I actually was going to point out that in the original agreement that we executed with Boys and Girls Club, it uses both terms. So it says
Right.
community/recreation center.
Yeah,
Goes
so
by both entities.
I think it's difference without a distinction at this point. Everybody knows. So, okay. Thanks for catching that. Anything else? Mr. Sullivan.
So I just want to kind of hear the rest of the story. So I've heard a little bit about, we want to expand the services offered by the facility. So I guess I'd like to know is why is Boys and Girls Club leading? Do they want to continue doing that? And then I also heard that right now we don't charge a fee to, I guess, members or those who use the facility, and will that remain in place going forward in the future? Thank you.
Through the Chair, Member Salt, There are a number of different elements of this conversation. I would say this conversation was precipitated by a conversation between the municipality and the Boys and Girls Club over the commitment that's inherent in that agreement, which Anderson just raised, that use of the building by the Boys and Girls Club is contingent on charging fees that do not exceed the fees that the municipality charges at other recreation centers. So the position of the municipality, which goes back to this conversation around the budget and at the end of the year, was that those services should be free to access for children accessing the services on par with how children's services are accessed at the Fairview and Spinnart recreation centers. That precipitated a larger conversation with the Boys and Girls Club about the financial viability of continuing to operate that program without the ability to charge fees, and about some of the input and feedback we heard from the community council and our desire to be responsive to that, to offer a more fulsome array of services. So all those threads came together into both the plan for a transition at the end of May, and then ultimately this request for a more expedited consideration of 2025 grant funds to support the Boys and Girls Club during the period up to that transition.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Mullins.
Thank you. So I also want to thank Boys and Girls Club for their long service to the Mountain View community, and certainly acknowledge and empathize with the challenges that your organization is facing. And so I'm glad to see that your work will be continuing in these other locations. And I would, just speak to the opportunity for Parks and Rec to operate the Mountain View Community Center as a true rec center. I think it's really exciting. I think there's a lot of potential for expansion of programming to not only benefit the kiddos in Mountain View, but also the wider community. And just, I guess, would want to highlight the importance of the community center. It really is a cultural hub of Mountain View. It is also, one of the only safe places for kids to be right now in Mountain View. They're not accompanied by their parents. A lot of the parks in Mountain View are facing some challenges, some public safety challenges, and I know the administration is working hard to strategize to address those issues. But this is where kids play, and it can be safe before and after school. It's where they pick up their backpacks in the fall, the backpack drive. It's where so many community things happen, where families can learn and play together. So hopefully my colleagues will support this, and I look forward to working with Parks and Rec, that team, and with the community members to truly envision what could this rec center offer to Mountain View residents. Pretty exciting. Thank you.
Next time, Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, thank you. I do intend to support this, but I have a couple questions. First off, for the Mountain View Rec / Community Center, so we have two items here. They're ultimately going to the same facility for the same purpose, right? Okay.
Through Chair Member Johnson, with one slight caveat, which is that the appropriation at the end that happened as a budget amendment has a specific caveat tied to it that says it's to enable accessibility without charge, basically, so to offset the cost of accessing services. So that is one slight difference between the standard operating grant that we give every year. And that's why they're traveling essentially as two different items, two funding streams, and then that one slight difference in terms.
Yeah, that makes sense, but we're talking about the same place for essentially the same program. Does anyone have any kind of handy metrics about what the utilization of the Mountain View facility looks like? I mean, how many kids are we serving here typically?
Through Chair Member Johnson, I would defer to the Boys and Girls Club to speak to those questions.
Thank you, Ganshish. Through the chair, we serve about 613 children. In 2024, with 613 children at Mountain View. And just to clarify, if I may, we have expended funds in January and February when you were asking a question earlier about expenses.
How about on like an average night, how many kids are coming in there?
Through the chair, we serve, I believe it's about 80 children a day is our average daily attendance. And we are open in the afternoon for club hours 2 to 7 approximately at Mountain View. And then the community is available to rent and use the facility in those other non-club hours for safety purposes.
So 80 kids per day is the average number?
Yeah, average daily attendance is about 80.
I mean, that's quite a few kids. I guess kind of, as I was looking at this and doing the rough math, and it's Monday through Friday, 2 to 7, I mean, that's about $500 an hour that it costs us to operate this place. That's a lot, right? And I know it's important work, and I'm certainly not going to vote against this. I don't want to pull the rug out from under these kids. I know how important it is, especially in this community, for them to have a safe place to go. But recognizing, times are tight, resources are strained. Again, just I'd be curious, when this comes around for us consideration next year to kind of, and maybe we'll be in a different boat because it'll be operated by Parks and Rec, kind of look at how does this compare to other programs providing similar work. Again, just recognizing $500 per hour to provide this. I mean, is that just the cost of doing business? Are there programs that serve, kids in these after school hours going to have similar costs? I don't know. It's just a question that I think I'd like to contemplate when we get into budget season for next year.
If I may, through the chair.
If you want.
So to answer that, the cost per child is actually, what we receive from the municipality doesn't cover all of the costs. And it is a different level of service. We have intentional programming for the kids, and we have trained staff, and it's a different model. The club model is different than a rec center model. And so the costs are higher because there are, we have to have a certain ratio of adults carrying adults to children and all of that. So it's, that's the basic premise of it. It's a different type of service.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Bronco and Ms. Martinez.
Thank you. That just led me to what I was thinking about is who's going to fill in that gap. A rec center is very different than the Boys and Girls Club program that has more accountability for, did the kids show up at a certain time and where is their backpack and they have their tubs and all of that. So who's going to fill that gap? Because I feel like there's going to be a need for that care.
Go ahead and turn to Sharon.
I just to the chair, so we're not that at this point we're working already on a transition of the model, and we looked carefully at that and considering this change. Certainly it will be a slightly different model. It will be something that looks more like a recreation center, but it will still involve programming. We offer extensive programming in a variety of different areas, such as our other two accessible municipal recreation centers. The Mountain View Boys and Girls Club location is not a licensed childcare provider at that location, so it's not that we're supplanting a licensed childcare provider with an unlicensed facility. And part of the next several months will be a clear operational transition between the Mountain View Boys and Girls Club team and the Parks and Rec team in terms of assessing the space, the model, the children who are accessing the service, and making sure that in doing this, orchestrating this transition, we are meeting the needs of the community, both in the after-school space and else, and in their other requests for support for a more fulsome recreation center model.
I'm assuming that 4 to 7 was the after-school hours. How do the kids get from Mountain View Elementary, Tyson, to the center? Is there bus transport now, or can you explain how that works?
The chair, I will Susan speak more detail. There is no bus transportation right now. That was the subject of some concern in the fall. And our plan would be to consider whether there are possibilities for resurrecting a bus service when after Hannah was completed. I'll turn to Samson for.
Thank you, through the chair. The transportation issue is one that technically Mountain View is a walking community, and so there's no school bus service to that community. And what we found was we were subsidizing the transportation, and it just became unsustainable for us as an organization. And it's a tough thing, but transportation just wasn't viable for the whole organization.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Martinez, actually I'd like to ask for a motion to extend meetings by 5 minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Long, second by Mr. Griffin. I'd like to ask unanimous consent to any objection. Hearing no objection, move by Mrs. Martinez.
Thank you, Chair. I'm trying to be brief, just to continue to clarify the data points around usage. I think are interesting. Some folks have raised awareness of that. Do we know a sense of the amount of people are served at our current rec centers?
Through the chair, member Martinez, we don't know those numbers for the state, but the Parks and Rec Department can follow up with that.
Right. Thank you. Anecdotally, I don't think I've ever been to the Fairview Rec Center where it wasn't something happening. Where there wasn't someone playing basketball or waiting to play basketball, where there wasn't a community meeting in the other room. So just anecdotally, I don't think I've ever seen that. Also anecdotally, or maybe just back to a data point, beyond the programmatic usage of the Mountain View Rec Center, the question to Ms. Anderson, beyond the programmatic usage of the Boys and Girls Club programming that you've described is different than a rec model. Can you give us a sense of the rental usage that you all have? I have never been to the Mountain View Rec Center at any time of day where there wasn't something happening. Can you give us a sense of that too?
If I may, through the chair, the usage, I believe there's a group in the morning called stroller moms that are wandering around the gym with their little ones. I know that we rent out the gym. I know that we have a faith-based group that meets in the downstairs. I know that we have other folks that rent it for other activities. So there are folks that use it that are part of the community.
Right, and I would just highlight, Chair, the difference between the Boys and Girls Club programming and its scope, specifically this programmatic model, to the amount of children it uses across the week at a dollar value, to a model that is described here today as a more fulsome community center experience that fundamentally, if we step back from the Boys and Girls Club's rental model and we just turn it over into, well, usage at a rec center, it's already built in high-level usage at the rec center. So then the fundamental questions become, how do we address the programmatic gap? But that's a good challenge to deal with, considering that there's already a tremendous high usage at the rec center beyond the programmatic model of Boys and Girls Club. So that's good news in terms of the community already knows the asset it has. Thank you.
All right. I don't know if there's anyone else. Mr. Wood.
I have a real quick thing, Chair. Back to where Member Johnson was working at 80 per day on the average. Do we have a max capacity, and do we ever reach that capacity? And second question, when this change comes about at Mountain View, is this going to change?
Through the chair, may I clarify, what's going to change? The number of kids?
When Boys and Girls moves out, are they not moving out?
We are celebrating the fact that we are listening to the community and they would like the rec center model, so we're working with the municipality to work on transitioning to a rec center model. Is that your question?
Yeah, that's a good question, but max capacity, because at 80 per day, I'm sure that it's a lot more than that at any given day.
The average daily attendance is about 80, that's pretty consistent. We were looking at the numbers of how we could fund, with the requirement of no fee. And so we actually upped that 80 to, I want to say, we might have even looked at 100 or 100 and some. That exact number is escaping me, I can get you that. But we did actually look at trying to serve more kids, because there is a limit, and it's limited by how many adults we have on the premise, because it's 1 to 20. So that's really the cap.
Thank you very much.
I'll just add on that final note that the Mountain View community has, for as long as I've been involved in the public process, which is going on 20 years or so, asked for a rec center, and I'm excited that we're at the crux of an opportunity and a time and moment when that promise can be fulfilled. It's hard to make promises, to fulfill promises these days, because resources are tight and imagination is limited, but this is a very great opportunity for everyone, I think, to be in their lanes and do good for the community. So I want to thank everyone for their support. If there's no one else, then the members ready to proceed. Vote. The motion is to approve items 4A through 4D.
Assemblymember Martinez,
Yes.
Assemblymember Rivera,
Yes.
Assemblymember Littlefield,
Yes.
Assemblymember Johnson,
Yes.
Assembly Chair Constant,
Yes.
Assembly Vice Chair Zalatow,
Yes.
Assemblymember Runbeck,
Yes.
Assemblymember Baldwin,
Yes.
Assemblymember Stolt,
Yes.
Assemblymember President,
Yes.
the vote is 10-0.
Thank you. On a vote of 10-0. AM 185-2025, AM 189-2025, AM 186-2025, AM 205-2025 have been approved.
Mr. Chair, the administration would request immediate, potentially a motion for immediate reconsideration to allow this payment to proceed as quickly as possible.
Thank you. So the administration has requested a motion to reconsider. It urges a no vote.
So moved.
Sorry.
Mr. Vaughn has made a motion to reconsider. Mr. President has seconded. I'd like to ask unanimous consent on this vote. Is there any objection to that motion?
It was dissent.
Right, well, but that's right, so.
Unanimous dissent.
On
Let's
a
vote
no
no.
vote,
Let's
so-
vote no.
Yes, I would like to ask for a unanimous no vote, just to keep the record just really clear. Is there any objection to a unanimous no vote? Thank you for clarifying. The question has failed to be reconsidered, so a vote of 10-0. So with that, then we'll turn quickly to audience participation and public wishes to be heard. 3 minutes. Go ahead. Okay.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, just to the whole assembly body and the administration, mayor, I just want to say Ganeshish Ha'adi, which is thank you for coming here today. And thank you for allowing the Boys and Girls Clubs of South Central Alaska to work for nearly 30 plus years with the families and children of Mountain View. And we are looking forward to this transition to what the community is looking toward. And I thank you so much for your service, because I know it is a very big job that you do. So again, Ganeshish, which literally translates to it couldn't be done without you.
Anyone else from the public wish to be heard? Seeing no one else, so any member comments? Seeing none, ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Warren, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.